Hey guys, my name is Patimio, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming or Battlefield-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that can be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a YouTube message. The first question for today comes from That Pesky Deathclaw, and it is, how would you feel about a gun's actual weight having an impact on how fast you run and aim down sight in Battlefield 4. This is really cool in concept, and while it's not revolutionary by any means, like there are a lot of other first-person shooters out there that have gone down this path and they've made it work for them, it would give DICE another tool at trying to balance out some of their weapons, because let's say, for example, you have an assault rifle. It's flat out amazing. Everyone uses it. It's got an amazing rounds per minute. It's extremely accurate. It's got a fast reload speed. Like, it is an amazing assault rifle. Now, let's say, for example, it's a little heavier than a lot of the other weapons in the game. It's got some bulk to it, it hasn't been to the gym for a while, and it's gonna take you a little bit longer to get your red dot sight up, to aim down sight. Now when you compare it to all of the other weapons, you have a slight disadvantage. And so if you're going against someone who is using, let's say, a lightweight personal defense weapon, and they aim down sight or you round the corner, they're gonna have a slight advantage over you. Yes, you still have all these amazing stats at your disposal. You know, it's extremely accurate, nice rate of fire, nice reload speed, but you incorporate this other layer of balance into the game, and it switches things up a bit. It switches that dynamic where you have to play around the weapon a little bit differently than you currently would in the current Battlefield franchise. And so if it was implemented correctly, I think it would be fantastic, but it would have to be done right. And honestly, it would have to be built from the ground up, because if you didn't design all the weapons with this in mind, it just simply wouldn't work. So if you just try to slap this on into Battlefield 4, it would be a giant mess. And honestly, it would be a huge nerf to the support class. Like, light machine guns are extremely heavy, and if you just slap this on into the game, no one would use the LMGs anymore, and well, only for people that like to camp a lot, because if it took you longer to get from point A to point B, and you didn't get a large benefit, and also took you longer to aim down sight with those guns, you would see a lot less people running around with these support weapons. Like, I enjoy running around with the LMGs every once in a while. I love my MG4. The AWS that was introduced with the Naval Strike patch is simply fantastic. Like, it's easily one of the best weapons in the game. But if it took you longer to get from point A to point B, it took you longer to aim down sight with all of these light machine guns, they just wouldn't stack up to all of the other weapons in the game. Like, they would have to have some other large benefit for using them more than they do right now because of the hindrances of this weight mechanic that would be implemented. And so honestly, this would have to be built from the ground up. And so I would not expect anything like this until like something like Battlefield 5. They may not even do something like this. This is probably not even on their radar right now. But if they did decide to do it, I think it would add a nice dynamic into the game. It would allow them to balance out some of these weapons a little bit more than they currently can, and I think it would be an awesome addition. The next question comes from Silent Nation, and it is, what do you think about bringing back gunner flares for the attack helicopter? I know they were removed in Battlefield 3, but I feel like the attack helicopter is very vulnerable and stingers fire incredibly fast. This would give the attack helicopters their much needed survivability. So if this was the same mechanics that it was back in Battlefield 3, I would have disagreed with you. I felt like the gunner flares back then were a little broken. If you were with two guys that knew what they were doing, they could stay up in the sky throughout an entire round. It was almost impossible to take them out because they could just constantly switch between firing off their flares. Like, they were almost immortal. You had to have a lot of people firing Stinger missiles to take them out. But because in Battlefield 4, they increased the regeneration of the flares, or the reload time of the flares, to 25 seconds, I feel like this would be a fair compromise, and not only that, but would also require more teamwork on the part of the gunner and the pilot, because right now, if you blow your flares, that 25 seconds feels like an eternity, and since there is just such an absurd amount of things that now locks on to your vehicles, got the anti-air vehicle, you have the thousands of Stingers, there's the active radar flying all over the place, like there is just an absurd amount of things right now that can take out aircrafts in Battlefield 4. And if there was just one extra tool at your disposal in the attack helicopter that would allow you to survive these firefights, or just allow you to survive anything in the game. Like, every single time I jump into the attack helicopter right now, even after the patch, I feel like a sitting duck. Like, I'll probably make a video on it, how absurd it is right now, but if there was just another tool, having the flare for the gunner to extend your survivability by just a couple of seconds, I think it would be a step in the right direction. Even if you wanted to make it so that it wasn't on the same cooldown as the pilot's flare, so if the pilot has a 25-second cooldown, make the gunner's like a 40-second cooldown. That way, if you get into those tight situations where you extend behind enemy lines or you extend it a little bit too far, it would give you a safety net to survive those circumstances. Or let's say there's 1,000 people locking onto you with Stinger missiles and you have no way to duck behind cover, at least for a good minute, it'll give you that safety net to get behind cover and survive that engagement. I don't want the attack helicopter to be overpowered. That is not where I want things to go, because I would say that back in Battlefield 3, it was on the overpowered side of the spectrum. That's probably the reason why DICE eliminated the flares for the gunner. That's probably why they got rid of below radar. They did a lot to nerf the power of the attack helicopter in Battlefield 3, but then they went way overboard into Battlefield 4. They got rid of a lot of the mechanics, they increased the reload speed of the flares, all of these different things to nerf its effectiveness, and right now it's one of the most useless vehicles in the game. It's not fun to play in it, you feel useless, it is just an awful gameplay experience, and I really do think that this would be a step in the right direction. The next question comes from Henry, and it is, do you think that DICE is going to do another close quarter DLC themed map pack for Battlefield 4? I would be a little surprised if one DLC was completely devoted to close quarter maps like we had back in Battlefield 3, because while I know that DICE really enjoys their theme, that's why we have the Naval Strike DLC, we had close quarters and armored kill back in Battlefield 3, DICE loves their themes, like it's something that they've been doing for a really long time right now. I would be surprised if they added something like this into Battlefield 4, because what they've seemed to be doing, and actually what I really enjoy, is that for each of the DLCs, it seems like they're giving us one close quarter map, 2 medium-sized maps, and 1 large map, or at least something along those lines. Like, for China Rising, I would say it was more around a lot more larger maps, but they at least gave us 1 infantry-focused map. Same is true for Second Assault. We got Metro, and then Guilin Peaks. And so I imagine that with all of the other future DLCs, they're going to continue on with this path. And honestly, I actually think that that's the right way to handle things, because while I enjoy more infantry-based combat, there are some people that do not like it at all, and to have an entire DLC that is completely devoted to something that they do not really enjoy, they would rightfully so be a little annoyed by that. And that was one of the problems that we had back in Battlefield 3, because the players that enjoyed the close quarter DLC probably hated armored kill, and then vice versa. And so I think the way that they're going about it is the right way, because it allows for all demographics to be represented. Everyone gets what they enjoy. If you like the large scale, it's there. If you like the infantry, it's there as well. And so I would be a little surprised if they devoted an entire DLC to one or the other, and I think they're going to go down the same path. The next question comes from Resticle, and it is, what do you think about Battlefield 4's current soldier mechanics? I find myself having to practically spam the jump button on the small objects, and when I can't get over them, I keep getting shot dead. Do you think it's fine as it is, or should they change it? This has been something that has always annoyed me about Battlefield, because while I completely understand that these maps are very complex, there are a lot of objects flying around, you have rubble everywhere, there's a lot of detail on these maps, and trying to make it so that it's a smooth transition from trying to travel from one section of the map to the other, I realize that there is going to be some things that you're going to get snagged on. That being said though, there are some clear polishing issues on a couple of these maps. Like, you are absolutely right. I am constantly spamming my jump button when I'm moving around and I'm trying to traverse around these maps. Like, even if I see a pebble that you would assume, or there's a boulder in front of you that you would assume you would be able to just run over like a normal person, you can't, because there's like this invisible wall in front of you, and if you don't jump, you don't go through that leap animation, you're gonna get stuck there, you're gonna be out in the open, someone's gonna find you, you're floundering, and you're gonna get taken out. And so I am constantly jumping in Battlefield 4, and I know that some people hate bunny hopping, they think that it detracts from the game, it's not what you would see in the real world. Bunny hopping is something that I don't actually do for a necessity to keep myself alive. Like, I'm not trying to avoid bullets, I'm just trying to make it so that I can avoid getting stuck on a random object in front of me. Like, there are some sections of the map, and one that comes to mind is that there are a couple of buildings where there's a small little ledge to the entrance of a building, like kind of what you would see at your front door, where you have the ground and then you have the building, and there's that 2-inch ledge. if you don't jump over it, there is no way that you can get inside. Like, you would assume that your soldier would be capable enough to get over that 1-inch ledge, but apparently he's not. And so there are a couple other instances of that in the game that does detract from things. And I don't know if this is just a problem with the Frostbite engine. I don't know if there's just so much going on. There's just so many objects in the game that there isn't anything that DICE can really do without spending like thousands of hours just trying to smooth everything out. And honestly, maybe that's just something that we should expect from DICE. But yeah, I would like there to be a little bit more polish on a couple of these maps. I think that the example that I gave about the doorway is pretty much inexcusable. Like, that is just absurd. And so yeah, I do think that DICE should do a little bit more to polish up these maps. But that is it for today's Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Once again, if you would like to submit your own question that can be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a YouTube message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.